Mozart is the fourth episode of the second season of Everybody Loves Raymond, and this is a pretty decent episode. As always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about what happens and share some thoughts along the way. And this is particularly a lovely episode involving Marie, and it starts off with Ali storming into the house. She's been over the road with Marie having a piano lesson, and she does not want to play piano anymore. And something I've noticed about Ali as a character, now that she's getting a lot more speaking roles, or a lot more speaking opportunities rather, she seems to have an attitude problem. Almost every time she speaks, it's not something that's very pleasant, which I think is probably quite realistic, actually, and I think it's very fascinating. And I know how the character develops over the seasons. I've seen the show before, but I definitely think she has a really well-written, well-developed character with a really strong personality, even as early as season 2. So she storms over, as I was saying, and Debra says that if she doesn't want to play piano anymore, she's only had 3 lessons, then she doesn't have to. They're not going to make her. But Ray thinks that she should stick at it. He doesn't want her to become a quitter, particularly after only 3 lessons. So they're about to tell Ali, well, Debra's telling Ray he has to tell Ali that he wants her to keep having the lessons. And then we get some wonderful comedy that I really enjoyed as Robert comes rushing in with a bunch of flowers and says that he needs a vase. And he's broken a vase, he needs to replace it. And that in itself isn't funny. It's the fact that he brought the flowers with him. I just find that to be very, very entertaining. And he kind of manages to let Ali know that Ray used to play piano, and then Ali asks Ray if he quit. And he has to realise that actually this is why he doesn't want Ali to quit, because he did. And I think it's fair to say that part of him regrets that. And I think that that's some really great food for thought. I think every one of us has regrets. And if a lot of that regret is about quitting something, I think this episode also helps to show that actually you can get back in it. In most situations, it is not too late to try again. And Ray goes to see Marie the next day, and he wants another lesson. He realises that he thinks he quit because Frank wasn't very supportive. He just thought Ray should be playing baseball and doing things outdoors with his friends. But he's gone back to Marie and has asked for a lesson because, quite admirably, he wants to show Ali that he could play piano. He did actually stick it out for much longer than 3 lessons, as we soon learn. And it's a really brilliant moment in Marie and Frank's house where Marie is vacuuming and Ray manages to make quite a mess. And we don't actually get to see the front room that often, so it was quite nice to see that part of the house, and definitely a space that I really enjoy. Of course, it is where the piano is. And initially, Marie thought Ray was making fun of her. But eventually, she realises he's being sincere. He wants to get back into playing the piano, at least a little bit, so that he can show Ali. And then we have the lesson, and it's really sweet seeing Marie and Ray sitting side by side. And things are going really well. She's calling him sweetie. It's all adorable. And then Ray has seemingly forgot certain things, and Marie's getting increasingly frustrated. She's bringing out the different practice books, and eventually she just storms out of the room. And just after that, Frank comes downstairs, and we have what I think is a very well-written exchange between father and son, because Ray actually confronts him and says, why weren't you encouraging when I was playing the piano? And I love Frank. I think he's amazing. I think he's very funny. I think he often has, well, he will sometimes say things that a lot of us will be thinking but will not say out loud. He's very blunt in that way. But in this particular scene, I didn't love the character because he was completely dismissive of any problems he might have caused by not being an encouraging father when it came to Ray and the piano. And I feel like there was a second where we got a glimmer of maybe not remorse, but certainly willingness to accept his part in Ray's giving up of the piano. And it's when Ray leaves the room and we have Frank in silence for just a couple of seconds. And then after the moment passes, Frank's shouting at the TV at whatever sports game is on. But in those few moments, I genuinely think we got to see a tiny bit of the cogs in his brain suggesting to him that actually maybe he didn't behave as best as he could have done. But the moment passes, we go back to Marie, and Marie, quite surprisingly, actually admitted she overreacted. It's very, very rare for Marie to admit any wrongdoing. And I think that's quite telling with how she behaves, particularly in front of Ray. I feel like she never ever would admit wrongdoing with Debra. I mean, occasionally she does, but usually it's, I did wrong, but here are all the things that are wrong with you. But actually with Marie in that moment, she just said she overreacted, and I think that was a really beautiful moment. But then she did also ruin it by saying sports are stupid a couple of seconds later. So things don't don't change for too long with Marie. And Ray's confused about how he managed to turn out right at any point, because his parents are both criticizing either his choice to play the piano or his choice to play sports, and that's going to be confusing, particularly for a child, if one parent's really encouraging one activity and criticizing the other and vice versa. That's going to hurt. And what I think was really interesting, though, is that Marie made it very clear to Ray that it wasn't because of Frank that he quit the piano. It's the fact that he just lost interest. As she said, he liked the idea of the piano, but he'd rather be out playing with his friends. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that that's perfectly fine. But I think it allowed Ray the moment to see that actually maybe Ali has a similar perspective. Maybe Ali would rather be doing other things than playing the piano, and it's not fair to force her to do something like that. Imagine if Marie had forced Ray to carry on playing the piano rather than letting him play out with his friends. As Marie pointed out, her relationship with her mother wasn't great because of how she treated her when it came to playing the piano. And I think there are so many different brilliant perspectives in this episode. I think there's a lot of understanding for different characters from other characters. And even with Frank, as I said, we get maybe a second of him recognizing what Ray was saying, but that definitely was left behind very, very quickly. And then we have a beautiful ending where Ray is playing the piano so beautifully, to the point where I googled, can Ray Romano play the piano? And there were several suggested searches from other people searching the exact same thing, because it was so beautiful. I was just mesmerized, and I had no idea Ray Romano could play the piano. But we can see very clearly that it is him, and it is his fingers moving. And of course, they could have dubbed sound over it, but it was very clearly beautifully, beautifully played. And it turns out, yeah, he can play the piano, which is really delightful. And it was a really nice way to end things. So ultimately, a really beautiful episode. We definitely had some really strong moments. We had some great moments between Marie and Ray. And I think the moment with Ray and Frank, it was uncomfortable to watch. I didn't completely love Frank's attitude, but I think it was a really important scene. And I think anybody watching it who might have a similar relationship with their young child and is not encouraging their activity because it's what they think or what they don't think they should be doing, hopefully it can encourage them to actually evaluate what's right for the child, and that is encouraging something they're interested in, as long as it's not dangerous or problematic. And playing the piano is rarely a dangerous activity. So definitely some food for thought here, some really great moments. And, well, I was going to say one of the strongest episodes from season 2, but we have just scratched the surface. Either way, brilliant episode. Definitely one I'll always be happy to watch, and obviously one that I thoroughly recommend.